Wow, King, that sex was really poggers. But can we get back to explaining the entirety of the Skyrim lore now?
Sure. So, I guess we'll start with like the player character, the Dragonborn. What the Dragonborn even means. A lot of it is explained in the game. Like you have the soul of a dragon, whatever that means, or like the dragon blood. Though it's not always like an inherited thing, which is a little bit confusing. But it's confusing because it's changed a lot. There's been like almost different versions of it in different games. So, like in Skyrim, Akatosh gave you the soul of a dragon, and so you're very good at shouting, and you can consume the souls of other dragons to learn shouting even easier. I think that's the main stuff in Skyrim. But in Oblivion, it was the Dragonborn Emperors was the main focus, which is there's been quite a few. These songs. It's kind of nice. So the first Dragonborn Emperor was Alessia, some kind of Saint Alessia, who was like the leader of a rebellion against the Aliens in Cyrodiil, and made the first empire of. I think it's sometimes called the first empire of Tamriel, but it didn't really have that much of Tamriel, so it wouldn't make much sense to call it that. I think, but first empire. And then, so for her, it was a blessing from Akatosh that allowed her to wear the Amulet of Kings to, which notably is, I think it was just like a large drop of Lorkhan's blood. We might get to Lorkhan later. To wear that and light. Sorry, I got attacked by wolves for a moment. Light the dragon fires, which let her stop Daedra from just invading Tamriel. Okay, so it's supposed to be hereditary, but she married. So Alessia's children probably didn't last long because she married a bull, a demigod in the shape of a bull, not literally a bull, but you know. A bit odd. Okay, I don't want to fight a dragon right now. I'm just trying to wander a forest peacefully. Yeah, a demigod or something. I think we don't exactly know what it was. I think you said son of Cain, but we don't really know how that happened exactly. Anyway, and so her children were minotaurs, and we don't. I mean, the next emperor after her was a minotaur, but we don't really know what happened to the minotaurs after that, because they kind of stopped being emperors and started being wild animals. And so something must have happened to replace them. But like, we don't even know what was going on with the emperors back then, because then it transitions to being controlled by the Alessian Order, which, funnily enough, not at all what Alessia wanted. They just named themselves after her, but I mean, she defined their religion before, and then the Alessian Order was like, let's do weird stuff, like try to kill the god of time for being too much of an elf, and then time stopped working for 2,000 years, which is just a very strange thing to happen. And so they were in control of the empire, but like who's the emperor? We don't know. Maybe they had like a figurehead emperor, or maybe they didn't even have one, and so what was going on with the amulet? Well, I don't know. And so that's already a bit weird. Then the second Dragonborn Emperor, Raymond, he's cool. He's got a lot of cool stuff. You can read about him if you want to. Well, I think a lot of it's non-official. I'll get to why it's not. I can't. I'll have to get to Kirkbride eventually, but like I can't do that immediately. So Raymond was born from a hill, and apparently I don't know, use Dragonborn somehow. Akatosh again. Blessing of Akatosh, the dragon god of time, said like, "Hey, you are the Dragonborn." Okay. Then he had like a son and a son, but then they got replaced by Akaviri, some like Sayasi, because the Sayasi had invaded, and I'd have to explain what Akaviri are, potentially. It doesn't matter, they got replaced really quickly, after Raymond died. And then, a bit later, Tiber Septim is Dragonborn, and again, that's like that one is where it gets confusing a little bit. I guess it's a blessing from Akatosh there, but I mean, he might not even been a Dragonborn himself, depending on what you're gonna believe. God. So Tiber Septim, or Talos, is also Dragonborn, and they mention that in Skyrim. There's a guy that's like, "I never saw Tiber Septim killing any dragons. Never heard of Tiber Septim killing any dragons. There weren't any back then, idiot." There were some dragons left. Tiber Septim even had a dragon, and not one that he killed. He just had it. I don't know what he did with it. It appears in the Elder Scrolls Redguard, which was like a spin-off game that a lot of people ignore and like don't play, but for like the Elder Scrolls as a setting, it was really important because that kind of set the modern lore up the way it is. Like Imperial wasn't a race before then. Like, who lived in Cyrodiil? Humans, I guess. I think I heard I read on the wiki that they actually used Redguard names. So maybe it was the Redguard Empire before then, but like Bretons. I mean, Tiber Septim, I think. He's also. It's weird. I don't want to get into that too much immediately, but it added Imperials as Cyrodiil as a thing that exists. Before, it was just the Imperial province with the Imperial city in it, and so there wasn't much there. That, and like, I think it kind of set up the modern religions, because I think there are some changes. Like, Talos didn't exist before then, I think. I'm not exactly sure. What was my point again? Oh yeah, Redguard was important for the lore. Oh, and the chief writer for the lore was Michael Kirkbride, who gets important later on. He wrote like some stuff for Daggerfall, and then on Redguard, it was the first one he was writing most of the lore for, and then Morrowind, he would be the main writer. But by Oblivion, he had quit, I guess, or I don't know, stopped working on it. Except for a few things, he was called to write the commentaries on the Mysterium Xarxes, which, I mean, if you've read them, they're Kirkbride's specialty is like the esoteric stuff like that. Just for an example. Oh, and Redguard was also the first game that Todd Howard was the director of. Like the lead, I don't know what you call him, director, sure. Just, fun thing, I guess. Where was I going? Tiber Septim had a dragon and was Dragonborn. And so for him it did actually have relevance to shouts, because Raymond and Alessia shouts don't really come up much. But Tiber Septim, I think even in the earlier lore, that was a thing that he did back when I don't think there was a connection between Dragonborn and shouting yet. Or no, there was. So if I've understood it correctly, in Morrowind, Dragonborn was like a thing for ancient Nord heroes, or maybe God, I don't know. I think it was a thing for like ancient Nord heroes, like Wolfhearth. Yeah, Wolfhearth is at the Battle of Red Mountain, and he was a Dragonborn. Um, this is gonna be so difficult to follow. I hope people can understand can follow what I'm saying here. Oh god. Wolfhearth was a Dragonborn. He was at the Battle of Bird Mountain, which is a big event for Morrowind's history. That was like 2,000 years before the game. He was a Dragonborn. He just shouted really good. You know, that was a Nord thing back then. And then I guess Tiber Septim was a Dragonborn too, and so he was already doing the shouting thing. But if you read, it's like the Arcturian heresy, I think. It's about how Tiber Septim might have been 3 different people combined, kinda, or at least like working together somewhat. So you had like Hjalti Earlybeard, who was called by the Greybeards to go up there. I think that's the mountain. Is it? Might be a different one. No, that's a much smaller mountain. It's not the right one. I'm over in Dawnstar, by the way, or the Pale, I think. I just like this area because there's no reason to go here. There's nothing here, pretty much, but it's just this valley. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked so much. I didn't think it would be this bad. Oh God, where was I? It's not too important to explaining Dragonborn, or like the Skyrim lore. Hjalti Earlybeard was a Dragonborn, he was called up. But Wolfhearth was like, oh, is that me? I'm Dragonborn, I was called. But then the Greybeards are like, no, and they shout at him and he dies again. But then he helps Hjalti Earlybeard and does all the shouting for him. And then Vurin Arctis gets involved somehow. He was a battle mage, I don't know. And then there's stuff about like the Underking. It's really kind of confusing. I don't know if I can accurately explain it on my own without any reading other lore here. Like, I guess basically I'm saying he was Dragonborn and he did do the shouting thing, but then he also was the Emperor and put on the amulet and did the Dragonfires thing, which is interesting. But okay, so a very important thing. In earlier lore, so I think like in Morrowind, I guess, there's a book, actually in Daggerfall, too. There was the something of Berenzia. If you ever done that stone quest in Skyrim, you'd know the name. She was made Queen of Morrowind by Tiber Septim. And you can meet her in Morrowind. She's quite old. Anyway, in that book, or maybe, no, was it that book? Oh god, no, it wasn't that book. Why am I talking about that book? In some older book, like for Morrowind, it mentions that after Tiber Septim died, I think his son had already died, and his only son had already died, didn't have any other children, and so then it went to his grandson, who then died, and didn't have any children, and so then it went to his niece, his brother's daughter, as the third emperor of Tamriel there. Which, you might notice, I mentioned dragon blood. The niece is not descended from Tiber Septim. And so then everybody else just descended from her in like a, more simple line. But so that then is contradicted by Oblivion, which clearly says in a lot of places, oh, the Emperor is descended from Tiber Septim. But so I had previously thought that it was just like, oh, they say they're descended from Tiber Septim, but that's just to like simplify it and make it sound better, like, oh, we're descended from Tiber Septim's brother or something. Like, you don't need to specify it. You can just say Tiber Septim, and that's good enough. You don't need to to explain the exact thing. But it turns out there's actually enough in Oblivion saying specifically descended from Tiber Septim that it's probably like a conflict, like a retcon maybe. To me, I just thought Dragonborn is a blessing of Akatosh. It's already been given to different people that weren't related. Alessia, Raymond, Tiber Septim. So clearly Akatosh was just like, yeah, his niece is fine too, right? Like, it doesn't need to be a descendants. It can just be anybody that Akatosh wants it to be, and Akatosh chooses descendants, I guess, but it can just be a different relative or any, I don't know. Away from them. They look dangerous. So, I don't know. You could call that a lore conflict. But to me, I'm like, yeah, Akatosh can just say his niece is fine, and the Imperial family just simplifies it, say, oh yeah, we're descended from Tiber Septim, even though they technically aren't, but it's close enough. And they clearly are still Dragonborn, because they do the whole amulet and fire thing, so it works well enough. And then, so yeah, then you get to Skyrim, so where, the dragon, the amulet is irrelevant. Okay, I'll fight this real quick. Alright. And honestly, I'm like losing track of what I was talking about here. That's like most of how the Dragonborn works. It's been, the Nord shouty man a few times, but it's also an emperor chosen by Akatosh. Oh, I forgot, there are also prehistoric Dragonborns added in Skyrim, and I guess, I think the only example we have is Mirak, who I think was supposed to be the first Dragonborn, right? And it's pretty weird to have them be like, oh yes, Akatosh has chosen you to be good at shouting to fight the dragons, I guess. Wasn't that the intention? I don't remember exactly what they were all about. I think the earlier Dragonborns were like, yes, we will fight dragons for you. But then Mirak was like, actually, I want to lead dragons. So, I don't know. But kind of a bad choice, Akatosh, if you're choosing these for that purpose. I don't know. It's also kind of weird because previously Akatosh wasn't in the Nordic Pantheon. The Nordic Pantheon had a different one from the one you see in Skyrim. In Skyrim, you just have the Imperial Pantheon from Oblivion or from Morrowind, which is, the one the Empire has. And it could make sense that, like, the Empire, their religions spread to the Nords over time. I mean, like, you even see in Morrowind, they're trying to spread their religion. There's, like, a missionary center in Morrowind, and obviously they could do the same to Skyrim, and it's a more similar religion, so it'd be probably easier to convert. But, and I don't remember I don't know how much of this is, like, actually in any game sources, and how much of it was just, like, something Kirkbride wrote. So Kirkbride, one of the reasons he's significant, he wrote a lot of, esoteric lore, like the 36 Lessons of Vivek. If you've tried reading those, they're pretty complicated. A lot of the metaphysical stuff was written by him, so, he cited some of the very important things, but also, I don't want to just say things that I think I heard this online, but also I'm not checking any sources for this, right? We are laying in bed, and I'm telling you the entirety of the Skyrim lore, so I can't, oh god, who's this?
Take this and hold on to it. I'll be back for it later. I'll pay you good. No time to talk. Snitch or double cross me and I'll kill you.
Sir, I'm doing a lore video. Okay, well, that's fine, I guess. Just watch him a bit. I was saying something important about Kirkbride, wasn't I? He's also, after he stopped working at Bethesda, he kept writing stuff sometimes, and most famously something called Coda, which is, and I think the O is a 0 or something like that, which is some kind of, like, it's like a fan fiction about Elder Scrolls 4,000 years in the future, where they have, like, magical space programs and computers and time travel, I think. I haven't read it. But a lot of what he writes isn't that far in the future. You know, it's still applicable to the games as they are. Oh, hello.
Did you see someone run past us now? Yes. How did you get this? I'm going to track down that thief. Murder him.
Alright. Did you give me 1 gold? Okay. Well, fine, I guess. So, like, well, I mentioned Raymond earlier. The Raymonada, I think is the name, is I think some of it is in the game, but Kirkbride actually wrote a lot of extra stuff that was not put into the game. And so it's like, potentially canon, right? Like, it, you know, if he wrote, 100 pages on Raymond and 10 pages of it are in the game, like, what are the 90 pages canon? I don't know, you could call it that. It's like close to maybe being canon. If you want it to be, then you can just be like, yeah, oh, that's canon. It's like a or you could say just like it's a fan fiction at that point. And that was like a big topic in the Elder Scrolls lore community. Anyway, and so I believe there's stuff he wrote. Okay, here's my thing that I heard online, and I'm not sure about. Was that Kirkbride wrote extra? So there was Nordic Pantheon lore already in the games. I know that's for sure, because in the book Varieties of Worship, you can find stuff about it. But I believe he also wrote extra stuff to be put into Skyrim, and then a lot of it wasn't. Like how he wrote commentaries on the Mysterium Xarxes. He wrote Skyrim religion stuff, and then a lot of it didn't get in. So some of this might be Kirkbride, some of it might be in-game lore. I don't even know how much is which. I don't care either. This is also some pretty good Kirkbride lore, I'd say. So, originally the Nordic Pantheon, their chief god was Shor, who you might hear in games, people will say like, Shor's bones, or whatever. Shor, also known as Lorcan in Elvish, it's Lorcan in Elvish, Shezar in Cyrodiilic. The very important figure in the lore, kind of responsible for the creation of existence and all that, kind of a big deal. Though the story's like he tricked. Do I want to explain the Anu and Padme stuff right now? Sure, I mean, I'm explaining the entirety of the Skyrim lore. You gotta start with the beginning of the world. So, the world started with Anu and Padme. Anu was like order, Padme is like chaos. And they're just things that exist in like nothingness, right? Nothing else exists. But they make a bunch of like spirits that have like varying levels of one or the other, right? So like Lorcan was a very Padmaic spirit, very chaotic, but not entirely bad, just like change, right? And Akatosh was a very Anuic, didn't want things to change, I guess. And so there's a bunch of those, and I'm gonna go in and sleep, because it gets, it's fine for now. It gets really dark, Oh no, this looks fine. Huh. Well, I'll stay out here. I'm gonna drink some water for a moment. Okay. So, I think the term for all the spirits is Atada, but I'm never completely sure if I'm... Because there's a bunch of terms around that area that... And I'm not sure which one is right, but I think they're the Atada. And they're, you know, moving around in nothingness, but then Akatosh is like, let's have time so that things happen in an order, and things in the past were in the past and things can happen later, because there wasn't time before then. I don't know. So then time exists, and then later Lorcan is like, let's make like a place that we would live. And they were like, wow, okay, a place where we could be and live, that sounds fun. But then they start making it, and they're like, what? Why am I not a magical spirit thing anymore? Why am I walking on the ground? What is happening, Lorcan? Why are you trapping us here? And so a bunch of them tried to leave, and a bunch of them did. You can see them up there. I think. I actually... I read really early on that, like, the stars are holes left in the sky by the ones that were trying to leave and made it out. What are they? The Magnagi. And so they left, but I couldn't actually find a source on that when I tried to find it again later. I don't know where that came from. It might have just been a random Reddit post, but I took as fact for some reason. But yeah, those might be holes in the sky left by everybody leaving. And so the 9 Aedra, or 8, sorry. Actually maybe even 7. I've heard people say that RK might not have been an original one, but I couldn't really find the sources on that. So the 8, you know, the Akatosh and... Oh, I'm gonna list them. Okay. Akatosh, Stendar, Julianos, Kinnereth, Mara, Debella. Did I say Stendar already? Zenithar. I said Stendar already, and then RK. Okay. Were ones that were like, okay, we'll make a planet, and we'll also stop existing. And they became like the physics of the planet. So like, when you... I don't know which one is like gravity, but, you know, Akatosh is the time. Akatosh is where, you know, how time happened, like I was over there and now I'm here. What is that? Time, I guess? And like, Kinnereth is, you know, the trees and animals, and wind. Kinnereth is kind of like the biggest one, honestly. The most number of things. Like, oh, Zenithar's trade and work? Okay. And Mara's like family? Like, what is... I mean, I don't know. Like how those manifested laws of physics. I don't know. I guess they still do stuff, kind of. Oh, but I guess before they did, it's a little bit conflicted, because also before they stopped existing, supposedly Akatosh, also known as Ariel, it's the elves, it's like, I'm gonna kill you for what you did, Lorcan. You trapped us here and tricked us into making a thing where we won't be magic spirits anymore and we'll have immortality, like, bruh. And so Ariel killed Lorcan. And Lorcan's heart was shot at it with an arrow over to make Red Mountain, so it's at the bottom over there. And the blood flew all over the place. A lot of it became ebony. Some of it became other things, like the Amulet of Kings, or the jewel that was put into it. So that's how the world existed. I don't remember what. Oh, so that's Lorcan, I guess. That's what Lorcan did. And so the Nords are like, that was cool. We like having a planet. So Lorcan is good. They call him Shore. Also, I think there are legends about Shore like leading the Nords in battle, like maybe against Ariel back in the days. And also, fittingly, Nords don't have Akatosh. They don't worship Akatosh. They have Alduin, who is evil. I mean, you can kind of see. I hadn't even made that connection before until just now, but like, oh yeah, the Nords would think that the god that killed their god was evil, and so they'd think of them as Alduin, the dragon that's gonna destroy the world. Which it's a little bit weird. Alduin used to be more of an abstract god instead of a physical thing you can go and find and kill. I'm gonna go to... I guess I can just wait. So it's a little bit weird that Alduin exists physically now, especially... Ooh, wait, look at that. Ooh, this is exactly what I wanted. Okay. So Alduin exists physically, I guess. Alduin's also supposed to eat the world. Don't know how. I think the theory... I think one of the graveyards says, like, oh, you killed Alduin now, but Alduin's gonna show up to eat the world eventually, right? Like, it's not never gonna happen. Alduin will just come back late. And for some reason, Alduin in this timeline was like, I don't want to eat the world, I want to take over it with dragons. Like that one. And so that's why you're sent to kill Alduin, because Alduin was being bad, not eating the world. Anyway, so the North had Alduin there as like an evil one that you at most like pray to not have bad things happen to you, because if you pray to Alduin, they might not do bad things to you. And then Shore is their main god, though they do also know that Shore is dead, though apparently also in Sovngarde somehow. I don't know how that works exactly. So their three main gods, their living ones, are Shore's three wives, Kinnereth, or Kine, Dibella, and Mara. I don't know if the name has changed for Dibella and Mara. They're not that meaningfully different, except they're just more important. But Kine is way more important. Kine's like their main god, their favorite one. You've probably heard at some point like Sons of Kine, maybe. Because like Kine formed them on the throat of the world and taught them how to shout, but apparently with Parthenax. I don't know. And Kine used to be the main god of shouting, but apparently Talos does it now. I don't know. So, and then, Dibella and Mara, they're kind of the same, but again, a bit more important. And that is actually kind of reflected in-game. Because in Skyrim, there's only, I think, like there's only a few shrines to gods. Solitude has one to the 9, or like the 8, because they had to remove one of them. And like Winterhold, Dawnstar, and Morthal, they don't even have one. Windhelm, I don't know if it does. But Riften has the Shrine of Mara, the Temple of Mara. Markarth has... Okay, give me a moment. Alright, that was a little bit rude. Riften has the Temple of Mara. Whiterun has the Temple of Kinnereth. And then Markarth has the Temple of Dibella. And there aren't any other temples dedicated to singular gods. I guess there's Halls of the Dead, which are kind of dedicated to Archay. And then there's a lot of Talos shrines around, but mostly you have those three. Those are the only three with a big place dedicated to them. So I think that's actually kind of good. They managed to get that in as part of it. Though they do say Kinnereth instead of Kine, which is pretty disappointing, because Kinnereth, underused. Kine, like Kinnereth, like Imperials just ignore Kinnereth for some reason. Kine, though, Kine's really cool. So it's like god of warriors and shouting and the wind and nature. And like, big fan of Kine. Just wish there was more of her, because Kine kind of got sidelined by Talos in this game, which there's a few like kind of perspectives you could take on Talos here. So you could say Talos was like the god of the Empire, and so it's a little bit weird that the Nords are so obsessed with Talos while also wanting to leave the Empire over Talos when the Empire was Talos's thing. I guess you could say it's not Talos's empire anymore, and that would make some sense. But Talos kind of takes the role of Lorcan in the Pantheon a little bit, and similarly the place of Shor, right? And so Shor was their main god, and so it kind of makes sense to transfer some of what Shor used to have to Talos. Like Talos is people have asked sometimes, like, did the Imperial Pantheon have a war god before Talos? Because Talos is kind of their god for war. And it's a bit weird that they just didn't have one. Stendarr kind of was, supposedly a patron of the Legion. Still not as much as Talos is, but probably was the war god before Talos. Anyway, and that's, one thing Shor does, lead the Nords in war, and kind of rule them. That's what Talos does too. So to me, it seems like Talos was kind of taking over some aspects of Shor there, and that's part of how you get Talos' place in the Nordic, well, in Skyrim. Talos wasn't in the Nordic Pantheon before. But in Skyrim they have the Imperial Pantheon. What else was in Skyrim's old religion? They had Junal instead of Julianos. I don't know if Junal was any different. I guess the College of Winterhold was dedicated to Junal, so it would have also been a somewhat religious institution, but they removed that. I think. Oh god. That might have been from a video where somebody said that they would be Junal. That might be somebody's completely made up thing. Actually, don't believe that. I don't believe that one. Winterhold was not Junal. Maybe, but I'm not. That was entirely a lore video of a video of somebody being like, how I would rewrite Skyrim, and it was like a good video. It was a good rewrite, but I don't know if the Junal was canon. But that was their god of magic still. That was the name. They don't do much, I think. And then there's a few they're missing. I don't know. I don't know if they have they have Stendarr as Tsun. It's a little bit weird they have the Tsu thing. Like Tsun? Whatever. Oh no, they also have Stendarr, Stune. No? Am I imagining that? Am I imagining Stune? Or Tsun? I think they had Tsun. And they were like the Thane of Shor. It's the guy you fight in Sovngarde, right? When you try to go into Sovngarde, you have to fight that big guy. I think that's Stune. Or Tsun. One of them. Maybe both. Anyway, I'm pretty disappointed that Kine isn't in it. There really should be more, like, to me I feel like having the east of Skyrim be Nordic religion, and that's, like, instead of Talos worship, it's the Nordic religion being the kind of thing at stake here. But oh well. There is one random guy somewhere. I don't know if I've ever even met him. Or maybe I might have met him once. He's really out of the way. Just an old guy in a cabin saying like, Kine is really good, you should worship Kine, and not that useless Kinnereth. Those Imperials are dumb. But he's just a guy somewhere in the wilderness. It's a singular Kine worshipper left in the game. So I feel like there should be more than that. But they did at least get that. So you imagine basically the Empire converted all of Skyrim effectively to their religion, which wasn't that different, which would, be why it would be that easy. And then, Talos take the oh, what is that up there? Some kind of bird. And Talos kind of took the place of Shore, and that's why they love Talos so much. I believe that's most of the Dragonborn and the Nordic religion. I've asked a friend for topics I could cover, and they suggested Nords have weak bones from fearing milk. So, I guess that's referring to the line, the insult many Nords use, milk drinker, where they insult you, saying that you drink milk. I would imagine it's more about, like, your mother's milk, which is a thing babies do. And so they're calling you, like, a baby or like a weirdo that still drinks their mother's milk. But I guess I'd kind of thought of it as a while as, like, oh, you're weak, you have to drink milk to not be as weak. I don't even need to drink milk to not be weak. It's a pretty weird interpretation, though. I don't know. Insults can be complicated sometimes. Oh, look at this. This is nice. While I'm on the topic of insults and, like, random things you hear, there was this claim going around the internet for a while. I don't know if people still believe it. It was just so the guards that say, I used to be an adventurer like you, then I took an arrow in the knee. Some people will say, actually, that's a Nordic expression meaning getting married. Oh god. The like chainsaw people are back. This is the third day of non-stop chainsaws, so I have to close the window now, sorry. They say the arrow in the knee is an old Nordic phrase for like getting married. This is just completely made up. I obviously can't track the origin, because there's like, it would be like a massive chain of people saying it, but it's just completely made up. It is not in the game. It's not. Some people act like it might be a real life thing. No, it isn't. Go to Scandinavia doesn't say that. Okay, is it in the game, in a book? No, it's just entirely made up. Maybe somebody even said it as a joke, but then somebody was like, "Oh, really? Wow!" And then they told like 2,000 people somehow, and it spread to millions of people, just randomly saying this thing that was completely made up. Funny how, misinformation spreads. Skyrim misinformation. Trying to think of another Skyrim topic to explain. I guess I could just talk about the Civil War a bit more. So, that's a good idea. So, at the end of Oblivion, at the start of Elder Scrolls 4, Oblivion, the Emperor is assassinated, and he had actually been Emperor through all of the previous Elder Scrolls games, except, I guess, like Redguard, maybe Battlespire. I don't know when Battlespire takes place. And I guess now that Elder Scrolls Online is out, he obviously wasn't Emperor then either. but they were all kind of close together, like within 30 years or something. But after that, they decided to do a time skip. So the Emperor was assassinated, and then the rest of the game, you're like, oh, we have to find somebody descended from Tiber Septim to wear the amulet. Ooh, look at this. Okay, kind of nice. Alright, that's nice. And then they're like, oh, the Emperor had a bastard son. He's a priest of Akatosh in Kvatch, and then you rescue him from Kvatch and you do a bunch of stuff, and like, okay, we can fight Marin Stegon or something. I'm summarizing this way longer than it needed to be. He like basically becomes the next emperor, but then he dies fighting Marin Stegon in like a giant who had like an avatar form in Tamriel, and so he had to turn into I don't know, the Martin Septim, the son, had to turn into Akatosh somehow to fight him. It's a bit weird, and that also killed him too. I don't know why. Turning into Akatosh would kill you. I mean, I can see why. And so then the Emperor is dead, and their son was dead, and all known relatives had been assassinated. So they're like, okay, who's the Emperor after this? And there was a bit of a war over it. And there's also a lot of chaos everywhere, because everywhere had the Oblivion Crisis happen, which was, a bunch of demons effectively coming out and trying to destroy the planet. And so everywhere was like, this is horrible. Why has this happened? And so everywhere was also like, actually, we were the ones that saved it. By everywhere, I mean the Somerset Isle and Blackmarsh. The High Elves and the Argonians were both like, actually, it was us that stopped it. And then, of course, the player character in Oblivion, Martin Septim, did. But, the Thalmor were like, yeah, we stopped it. And so then Thalmor got really popular. And they took over Somerset and declared independence from the Empire. And the Empire was a bit busy fighting over who should be Emperor next to stop them. And also Morrowind was completely destroyed. That happened too. And then Argonians invaded Morrowind, and so that part of the Empire fell apart. And then I don't know how I guess the Khajiit believed the Thalmor, supposedly, and so they were like, wow, the Thalmor is so cool, you brought the moon back. I think the moon was involved in that one. I don't even know how that happened. And somehow I don't even know how the Thalmor got Valenwood and elsewhere, the Wood Elf and Khajiit provinces, but they did. So then the Empire was down to just the human provinces, basically. But then Hammerfell... then the Aldmeri Dominion invaded, and that was the Great War. And the Empire lost, because they'd been busy fighting each other for a while over who should be Emperor. And then though it wasn't that bad of a loss, technically. I've heard it was kind of close. I don't even know where they got that from. It's the thing I read online. Maybe I don't believe that one. So they're like, okay, we'll give Hammerfell to the Aldmeri Dominion, and we'll also ban Talos worship, because the Thalmor hate Talos, because they're a human god that ascended, and to the High Elves, or, to the High Elves, you can't ascend, you only become worse, mostly. Because it's like, the Atada that were trapped here and became people eventually that walked around. I forgot to mention that. Some of them escaped, some of them were like, okay, we'll be Adria, we'll be physics. And then a lot of them were just like walking around on the planet, like, what the heck is this? And the High Elves were like, those ones were the best. We'll never be able to be like them again. I mean, because they did like live a lot longer and all that. They're like, okay, the only way to continue to be like them is to carefully control our breeding so that we won't get worse over time. But those people, like Ariel was a god. And so to be a human that also became a god is like, how? It doesn't make any sense. And so they had to ban it. Sorry, I got attacked by a wolf there. Some people will say like, oh, the Thalmor want to destroy the world. Maybe, I don't know. I would imagine it's like the most extreme Thalmor would want to do it. Because it's a pretty weird thing to do. Most High Elves don't actually want to destroy the world. That's a bit extreme. But they are, they do at the very least hate Talos, and so they don't want Talos worshipped. So they forced the Empire not to. Oh god, there's a dragon after me. This isn't calm and relaxing. So they forced the Emperor to stop Talos worship, though they weren't actually enforcing it that heavily. I guess they also allowed, like, Thalmor Justiciars can come in and search for Talos worship. That probably was part of the treaty. And then they'll take Hammerfell. But then Hammerfell was like, what? The Thalmor? Why? And so obviously they didn't want it. They fought the Thalmor that tried to... The Aldmeri Dominion that was trying to be like, hey, we own this now. Hey, we own this now. The Empire says we own this. And then they're like, we don't say you own it. So then they fight, and they win. And so Hammerfell's independent now. But over in Skyrim, people are still mad about Talos being banned. Though they weren't that mad in the past, because, again... nobody in Skyrim would report somebody else for worshipping Talos. So as long as it's like you don't have somebody screaming in the streets in front of a statue of Talos about Talos, then it's probably good enough. But Ulfric, what was going on with that? So like at one point, I think it was while the Empire was having significant issues. The Reachmen over in the Reach, over here, broke free from Skyrim. They had a big rebellion. They took over the Reach and said, we are not part of Skyrim, but we are part of the Empire. Hey, Empire, please recognize us. And the Empire were like, okay, sure. But then Ulfric Stormcloak came in with a band of warriors from his home. He was the son of the Jarl of Eastmarch over in Windhelm at the time. Came over and helped the previous Jarl of the Reach, or Markarth, take back the Reach from the Reachmen that had rebelled. And he had the condition that the Jarl would have to allow Talos worship. And so the Jarl was like, okay, I'll allow it. But then the Thalmor were like, somebody's allowing... That's a dragon. Just standing there. Okay. Thalmor were like, somebody's allowing Talos worship. Rah! We have to stop it! Oh god, I don't want to fight these things. What was I saying? And I don't remember exactly how it goes. I think there's like a fight and like Ulfric gets imprisoned, maybe? No, that happened with the Thalmor. I'm not really sure what happens next. I know that Jarl of the Reach dies, and his son does not care as much about Talos, and so he's like, okay, I'll ban it again and be part of the Empire. That's fine. I'm just gonna go in here, lose any enemies for a moment. Okay, apparently it was a ghost troll, so it followed me in, and I had to fight it in there, but that's fine. What was it? So Talos worship, I don't know. Ulfric becomes Jarl of Windhelm, and he wants to be... Well, so, one thing about Ulfric that I think might not... That isn't exactly... I don't know, you might miss. You might think Ulfric is just stupid, and he kind of is, but also he wants to be High King. If you think about what... So, the big thing Ulfric did was he was like, I want Talos worship, or Skyrim will be independent. And he was like... And to start doing that, he went and killed the High King of Skyrim. And it's like, I should be High King of Skyrim now, because I killed the High King of Skyrim. But the thing about the High King of Skyrim is he really liked Ulfric, and might have, and likely would have agreed with Skyrim declaring independence from the Empire. And like, if they had done that, they would have been way more successful, because like, Ulfric killing the king started a civil war, because nobody, you know, a lot of people don't well on like the person that just killed the king and was like, oh, I'll be the king now, and they're like, well, I don't think I really want to believe that, and also I want to be independent from the Empire. I'm like, I don't want that. But like, if the King of Skyrim had said, yeah, we should be independent from the Empire, probably wouldn't have been a civil war in Skyrim. Probably just would have been unhappy Jarls at most, but like, they wouldn't have started a war over that, probably. So it would have been a lot easier. And I mean, given it's possible for the Stormcloaks to win, then obviously they would have won if they were even better. So why did Ulfric do that? Is he stupid? No, he wants to be High King because the previous High King was quite young. Younger than Ulfric. So he was not going to live long enough for the other High King, you know. The High King was going to outlive Ulfric, giving him no chance to be High King. So he had to go and kill the High King so he could become High King. And then that's why he's so stupid, or, you know, why he seems so stupid if you think he's just actually trying to get Talos worship. It's not at all just about Talos worship. He also wants to be king. So, that's the issue with Ulfric. I had some other ideas I was talking there. What was it? Oh yeah, so this is a little bit off track, not exactly Skyrim lore.
Speak.
Oh, okay. But because I was mentioning the idea that Thalmor wanted to destroy the world. That, I think I heard it came from Michael Kirkbride, and so, you know, debatable canonicity. But it reminded me of my theory, which isn't actually that one. I mentioned it one time, and people were like, you mean the Thalmor wanted to destroy the world 3? That obviously isn't true. And I'm like, no, it's completely separate. It's completely separate. But every Elder Scrolls game, except the first, has had the destruction of a tower. So what I mean by towers? The most obvious is like the White Gold Tower in Cyrodiil. And that one isn't destroyed, but the stone of the tower is destroyed. And the stone of the tower is just like a thing associated with the tower that has its power. So what are they even? So they're big things that have some kind of they like anchor the world, kind of. And so the first one is the Adamantine Tower, which is in High Rock. And you can actually visit it in Daggerfall. I don't know what it looks like. I haven't done it. And so that's like the first one. That one, the gods made that one. The Aedra made that one. But then all the others were imitating that one. So like the White Gold Tower was based off the Adamantine Tower. They made it similarly. And then there's one in Somerset. There's a bunch of them. I think there's 8 even. So in Daggerfall, the Numidium is destroyed, which was a tower made by the drummer. Though it's not a tower, it's a giant robot. There's a lot of fun stuff about the drummer I could talk about, but for now, the drummer made a giant robot, and they accidentally destroyed themselves while making it. That's how all the drummer disappeared. They were making their giant robot, and they messed around with Art of Lore to power the robot, and then they disappeared. We don't know exactly what it was, but we do know that. The Numidium functioned similarly to a tower. It had a bunch of magical powers or something. I don't know. They're pretty vague about what it actually does. But they're important things at the very least. So the Numidium was destroyed, and then in Morrowind, the Heart of Lorkhan was destroyed, which was the stone of the Red Mountain, the big volcano there that shoots out all the ash. That apparently was also a tower, caused by shooting Lorkhan's heart into it, I guess. And then in Oblivion, the Amulet of Kings was destroyed, which was the stone for the White Gold Tower. And then in Skyrim, it's a little bit unclear whether or not it was destroyed. The Throat of the World is supposedly another tower. Issue is, the mountain's still there. Okay, so that wasn't destroyed. What was? The stone of it, maybe. But we don't know what the stone was. I believe there's some kind of writing, it might have been by Kirkbride, that said the stone is the cave. We don't know what cave. There is a notable cave in Skyrim, under the ground, or in this area even, Blackreach, I think it's called. I'm pretty sure it's Blackreach. I've almost never gone there, so I'm not sure I remember it. But that's obviously nowhere near the Throat of the World, so that doesn't make sense. There's like a bunch of caves in Skyrim. Were any of them destroyed? I don't know. I ran into one weirdo online that was trying to say the cave was Plato's allegory of the cave. That was destroyed in Skyrim. I don't. That's obviously not the stone of the Throat of the World. That is just obviously not. Some people do theorize it could have been Paarthurnax, which I mean kind of makes sense. Paarthurnax has been sitting there for thousands of years. There's that time thing that you do, the time wound that happened that summoned Alduin, could be related to that. So like, especially if Kirkbride, I'm pretty sure the cave is from Kirkbride, so it could be anything. And so we've got a few candidates if we ignore that: Paarthurnax, or the Alduin, or the time thing that you do with the Elder Scroll. Could be one of those. Paarthurnax, I mean, is optional to kill, but maybe Paarthurnax does die canonically. And so maybe the stone wasn't destroyed in this game, but it's also very possible it was. So I'm still saying every game had one destroyed. So the next game, what are they going to do? Well, in the lore, so I think there's 4 towers left. There is the Crystal-like Law. There's the Crystal-like Law in Somerset. Then there's some tree in Valenwood, some moving tree. There's one in Yokuda, and then there's the Adamantine Tower. So, of those, Crystal-like Law was supposedly destroyed by the Thalmor. The one in Valenwood disappeared. the one in Yokuda, I mean, Yokuda was destroyed, right? So that one's gone. And then there's the Adamantine Tower left. So is there only one left? No, I'm pretty confident there isn't. Because... Well, so... This relates to the next game. Even before it came out, I was like, it's probably going to be in Hammerfell. It came out. The trailer that came out years ago. I was thinking it would probably be in Hammerfell. Though Valenwood and Sunset Isles were still possibilities. And anyway, about the game, what I think... Everybody is saying it's going to be Hammerfell and High Rock. I think it's just going to be Hammerfell, but also Yokuda. So Yokuda, if you don't know what it is, the Red Guards came from Yokuda because it was destroyed. How it was destroyed, I'm not sure how much of this is official lore. I think the like weird Kirkbride interpretation, or like weird, I don't know, obsessed with lore weirdos interpretation is that somebody got so good at swords that they cut an atom and destroyed the continent in a nuclear explosion, which would be rather funny. But somehow it's destroyed, and so all the Red Guards had to go over in boats to west of Tamriel. But it's not actually all gone. And this is, since I think Redguard even, it hasn't been all gone, which I don't know if the Redguards had Yokuda lore before Redguard, so that might have been from the beginning. But there's a map, or a globe, I think, a map, where you can see it's effectively some big islands left. Presumably like the mountaintops of it, because it like sank, but the mountaintops would still be there, and so there's, you know, still stuff there. And in Oblivion, you even meet, in the town of Anvil, there's some Nord sailor that's like, I sail to Yokuda. And he does, you know, it's still there, you can sail there and trade with him. And people still do sometimes. I mean, it's on a map, as I said. I might even edit it and put it on screen if I'm... I don't want to do much editing, but I guess, you know, just for you, I'll put a map on screen. So Yokuda's still there. And we don't explicitly know the tower was destroyed. It's just assumed because Yokuda was destroyed, but it wasn't even completely destroyed. And so obviously the tower can still be there, and that'll be in the next game. I'm sure of it. And what's even better about it, the stone of that tower was a cool sword. So that's going to be a pretty good item somewhere in the game. That's going to be like a cool sword you get as part of the storyline. I'm sure of it. I know exactly what will happen. I've known it for years. I knew it 6 years ago. I called it. And then 6 years from now, when that game finally comes out, I'm going to be right. Everybody's gonna feel so dumb for saying that it's High Rock and Hammerfell and saying that the tower in Yokuda was destroyed. I know it wasn't. It's still there. It's still got a cool sword. It will be destroyed in that game, though. Probably. Oh, God. Huh. Is that a fire axe not gonna horker? That's wood that looks like a horker. Okay. Anyway, so that's my, theory about the next game in the Elder Scrolls series. It's going to be in Hammerfell and Yokuda. Like it could have High Rock, but I just think like we barely had any of Hammerfell in Daggerfall. We had most of High Rock in Daggerfall, though not all of it. And so like if they're going to do all of Hammerfell, I feel like they have to, right? They're not going to just do a tiny amount again. They got to put all of Hammerfell. And then they need at least some of Yokuda, then they're not going to also do High Rock. That just seems like too much to me. I think they should be focused on Hammerfell, and they would get all the desert and stuff, and not the Iliac Bay, which is the, you know, water between Hammerfell and High Rock. Yeah, so that's what I think is going to happen. I'm pretty confident. I also think it's possible later games might I mean, the next two games would be in Valenwood or Somerset Isles, presumably, because there's still towers there. I mean, supposedly Crystal Lake Law was like deactivated or something, but it can just be reactivated, maybe, and then it can be destroyed again. Who knows? And then, I mean, in Valenwood, the moving tree that is supposed to be its tower is supposedly missing, so I mean that's an obvious story hook. So yeah, that's what I think is going to happen with the Elder Scrolls series for the next few games. I guess there's still a lot of Skyrim lore to explain, but you know, this has been like an hour of it, so I think that'll be good enough for now. Let me know if anybody wants more rambling about Skyrim lore for an entire hour. I could probably make more. I just have to think of new topics. I feel like I kind of I ran out of ones I could ramble about a bit sooner than I expected. I also want to make a video on how much I like the Nightgate Inn. I guess I could talk about it now, but like, you know, it's at the end of a video. Not. I think it could be its own video. But also, when I went in there were a bunch of modded characters. I got, you know, a lot of mods. I went through a giant list like 7 months ago. If you just look up like Skyrim mod installation guide, you might find it. And so that's where all the graphical mods are from. I think it looks kind of nice. Glad I have those on. But, you know, some mods I got add new NPCs to places, and apparently several of them decided to add new NPCs here. So it's a bit crowded in there when it's supposed to be extremely not crowded. So I don't know how well the video is going to work. I might be able to like uninstall the mods and then come back at it. It's a bit risky to, you know, remove NPCs, but the mod that contained them. Maybe I could use the console to just delete them. That's not a bad idea. Alright, well, anyway, if anybody wants that, or just another hour of rambling, I could do either. I could also use it to a different location, maybe. I like this place, but I feel like I've rambled every corner of it, so I could probably go somewhere else. I don't know. If anybody has a suggestion, like, of a tundra of Dawn Stars isn't a good place. Okay, sure, I'll try the tundra of Dawn Star if you want. If anybody says it's good, I don't know. Yeah, there you go. That's the entirety of the Skyrim lore. Thank you.